We're going to get a lot of information this week that's going to impact the Patriots offseason. Most of it we will be able to break down on the show next week. And the reason I say most is because the way the schedule plays out this year. So workouts are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mm-hmm. So there will still be a set of workouts to come when we're on the air next week.
Yep.
The final group working out, of course, is offensive linemen. You know what else happens on the day of the workouts?
The measurements.
The measurements. So you can pencil in. I've been making the joke all week.
10:05.
Right. March 2nd, mark your calendars, Patriots fans, for Will Campbell's arm length. At 10:02, we're going to get Will Campbell's arms. So we'll do the whole show next week, and we still won't have that answer, which is integral. I cannot wait. The last month of my life has been explaining to people, this 20-year-old kid, if his arms are this long versus if they're just half an inch longer, it changes everything. Please, I'll take 9 o'clock. Yeah, we can recap all the other positions through the first hour. I'll take 9 o'clock. Please get that measurement in. But Will Campbell's arms will be measured within a week, probably a week from just about right now. He'll be getting measured in at the combine. So for people who don't really understand how this works, the general consensus, you kind of heard it there, that was Dane Brugler of The Athletic. The general consensus is tackles should have at least 33-inch arms because you basically need that reach when, it's not like at guard where you essentially have help on both sides. And that doesn't mean you have designed help, but you can't really run around a guard because you're going to run into where the center is. You're going to run into where the tackle is, right? You obviously can't run around the center. He's in the middle. You can run around a tackle. So being able to have that long reach just gives you more ability to protect that edge and prevent you from getting run around. Mm-hmm. So the consensus is right now 33 inches. The projections, and this is just people eyeballing it, people who focus on this stuff much closer than I do, think Will Campbell's going to be right around 33. Mm-hmm. If he's above, it's going to be just above. If he's below, it's going to be just below. So most of the outcomes are obvious. And if he's below, that doesn't mean he can't play in the NFL. The guys that are below the threshold just move inside to guard. The example a lot of people bring up is Peter Skoronski, who did this a couple years ago with the Titans when Mike Vrabel was there. Now, Peter Skoronski had 32.5-inch arms. That's well short of the threshold. Half an inch is well short in this, when you're talking about these things. Game of inches. Skoronski moved inside to guard. He's a good guard. He moved inside to guard. Joe Thuney's another one who played tackle in college. Arms are too short, moved inside to guard. You saw him kick back out to tackle this year with mixed results, and some of that was just because of the length. Mm-hmm. If Campbell comes in 32 3/4 or shorter, and they measure this in eighths, and you might see where I'm going. If he comes in 32 3/4 or shorter, he's a guard. He's a guard. We stopped talking about him at 4th overall. Alaric Jackson becomes, maybe, assuming Ronnie Stanley gets re-signed, Alaric Jackson becomes the most important player this offseason for the Patriots, all of that, right? Will Campbell's a guard. If he comes in 33 and above, 33 or above, 33 and an eighth, 33 and a quarter, whatever, he's a tackle. I don't want to hear, they're still on the shorter side. He was in the SEC. It's not like we have to project this length. I mean, you do have to project a certain amount to the NFL. Yeah. But he's going up against NFL pass rushers week in and week out in the SEC. Mm-hmm. And what was the clip there? He allowed 2 sacks.
In 30 games.
And
it was roughly 3 years of college football.
And I'm pretty sure it was his first career game and his last career game, if I remember correctly, that he allowed that sack. So, it'll translate. It'll translate. The chaos scenario is Will Campbell's arms measure in at 32 7/8, which is as under as you can be, or as close as you can be while still being under. Mm-hmm. Because I mentioned that 33-inch threshold. That's not a long-standing thing. It was 33 and a half for a while, and then Rashawn Slater in 2021, coming out of Northwestern, measured in at 33-inch arms. Some people thought he'd have to play guard. The Chargers were he's talented enough to kind of break the mold, put him at tackle, and obviously that's worked out. Mm-hmm. So if Campbell comes in at 32 7/8, now we get to spend the next 2 months debating, is he talented enough to reset the threshold again like Rashawn Slater did? And that's going to be – so I think that's what it's going to be, because of course it will be. Of course we won't be able to get a clear answer on this.
Yeah. It makes more sense for this to be a drawn-out process than to be blatantly obvious.
Right.
I think – here's my question is, will you have a GM who's willing to risk it all and say, nah, I'm not going to do it. I need a left tackle. Are you willing to be the GM known as the guy that passed up the Hall of Fame left tackle because of arm length? Like, are you willing? Is this guy that good to where you look at the tape and say, even though his arms are slightly short, he is throwing people out the club left and right? They can't get to quarterbacks. You know, do you have a situation where you have a quarterback on your team right now and you need a left tackle, and he's sitting there like, please take this kid. I need this guy protecting my blinds. I don't care what his arm length is. Are you willing to be that GM or that head coach that says no and allows this kid to slide, and he falls into a situation to where you're like that? Why didn't I take this kid? Like, is he that good talent-wise? 2 sacks in 30 games is ridiculous. Right. Do you just completely is he the guy you completely overlook this whole arm length situation and say he's dominant in the run game? No one gets around this kid. His footwork is so solid that, you know, even if guys try and go wide on him, he still finds a way to cut him off. Do you completely overlook it with this kid simply because of his other talents?
Well, that's going to be the question. And some of that, I don't think that there's going to be a blanket answer to that, right? So for me, I mean, you put Hall of Famer in there, that might be a bit much. Mm-hmm. But I don't need a guy, and people might roll their eyes at this, I don't need a certified Hall of Famer at 4th overall. I want a guy that is, especially in this draft where there's not a lot of talent, give me a guy that's going to be here for 10, 12 years, plug and play, set it and forget it starter at a premium position.
Yeah.
If Will Campbell can be a completely different play style. But, like, Nate Solder, nobody was talking about replacing Nate Solder.
Yeah.
Good, solid tackle. If he can be like Nate Solder plus, I would take him 4th. So, to your point, you know, at 32 and 7/8, yeah, I think he can reset the number. Mm-hmm. I think he's that good. If he comes in at like 32 and a quarter, no, there's like going to be, he legitimately won't have the reach at that point to play the position. I don't think he can play to that level. And if he's drafted as a tackle. Now, as a guard, I think he can. But the Patriots shouldn't be taking a guard 4th overall. They shouldn't be taking a guard in the 1st round. So, to your point, like, I think there are, and to the Brugler clip as well, like, teams want him to be a tackle. They look at him and see tackle. Mm-hmm. But I think that's only going to go to a certain number, and it's basically how, and every team may have a different number. Okay, we see him as a tackle as long as he comes in 33 and above. Another team might look at it and say, we'll draft him as a tackle at 32 and 7/8. Is there a team willing to say, we'll draft him as a tackle at 32 and 3/4?
Yeah.
Right? And that's going to be a team-to-team thing, but that's what probably going into this week they are asking themselves. So when they get the measurement, they can put the full evaluation together. They're probably discussing those different outcomes now. It does help that there have kind of been, and not quite that short, but a run of tackles with shorter arms that have had success in recent years. I'll give you one. He's a right tackle, so it's not apples to apples, but he's built physically very similarly. Much more athletic than Campbell, but built very physically similarly, and that's Penei Sewell. Mm-hmm. Who came in at 33 and a quarter. So teams are willing to jump around that number. They're absolutely willing to jump around that number. You just have to have the talent for it. And that's basically what everybody's going to have to ask themselves if Campbell comes in on the shorter side is, are they willing to give him a chance at whatever number he comes in at?
No. Okay, real quick. This quick question. And on all the games he's played, is there a situation that happened to where his arm length was a problem, to where this became an issue for him? Like, was it a particular game against a particular opponent where it was like, see that arm length thing right there, that might hurt him on the next level? Was there ever a situation to where it looked like he was being overwhelmed to where these questions came up for him? Or is it just people eyeballing and saying, I think his arms are short? You know what I'm saying? Like, is he?
I mean, there's
what really got this conversation going with him?
There's a couple, like, there's no perfect prospect, right? You can find clips of Travis Hunter running some routes that aren't as crisp as others. There's plays where Abdul Carter gets stonewalled on a rush. Like, I'm not going to say that's not there, but it's not there to a concerning amount. Honestly, one thing I really like about Will Campbell is the few losses that he did have, and everybody points to the South Carolina game where Kyle Kennard gets him really good on like the second snap. He learned and he adjusted, and he didn't get beat the same way twice. Like, he's really good at making adjustments when he does get beat to prevent it from happening again, which you want to see. He's a quick learner. There will be people who tell you there are more examples of him getting, driven back into the quarterback. A lot of the times, not every time, but a lot of the time when I see people posting those clips, it's not so much Campbell getting driven back into the quarterback as much as it is Garrett Nussmeier having no pocket presence and running into Campbell. It was frustrating how much that happened. And by the way, that's also really true for a lot of the tackles in this draft. College quarterback pocket presence is not good. You watch Kelvin Banks, you see a lot of that with Quinn Ewers too. So I'm not going to say like it's never a factor. There's times it has been, and it will be at times in the NFL. But I think part of what I like about him, he does a really good job of, okay, this guy beat me this way. Let me make sure I do this so he can't beat me with that move again. In the chess match that is pass rushers against linemen, and, you show a move, okay, here's my counter, here's another move, here's a counter, that, back and forth. He's really good in that back and forth, I think, of staying a step ahead for most of the game.
Yeah, I was just wondering why this became a conversation with him, but I understand the importance of it and how they measure it out. And I know we're out of time, but I was going to ask, has you ever seen situations where guys have overly long arms and it didn't really pan out to success on the flip side? But we'll get into that another time.
Yeah, I'll just say Dylan Stewart, who's a true freshman at South Carolina, who's unbelievable. Obviously not in the draft, but he has, I don't know what his arms measure in because he hasn't been measured, but he looks like he's on the longer side. It was another one of those things where, like, he got Campbell really good once in that game, and then Campbell kind of figured him out from there.
Yeah.
So it happens. It's not that it doesn't happen. It happens, but he adjusts well when it happens, which I think is a good trait. Is a good trait to have in a player.